Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Black Business Roundtable live broadcast. My name is MC Pearson. I'm from 25 Mike Printing, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Wake Up Show Chicago, powered by the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce. We can be heard weekly on WVON 1690 AM, and you can catch us on Facebook and YouTube at the Wake Up Show Chicago. I am one of your hosts for this event. Today, we've gathered esteemed leaders from various industries to delve into the crucial issues facing Black businesses in Illinois and explore the vast opportunities that lie ahead. Our mission is clear: to ignite discussion, foster collaboration, and propel positive change within the Black entrepreneurial landscape. Throughout this broadcast, we encourage you to participate by engaging with us through the chat features found both on YouTube and on Facebook, ensuring that your voices are heard and your questions are answered. Prepare to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we embark on a journey of knowledge sharing and impactful dialogue. Together, we can pave the way for a brighter future for Black entrepreneurs in our state. Now, one of my co-hosts, Mr. Lord Mike on the Wake Up Show Chicago. Sir, I'm excited about tonight. Why don't you come on and wake us up?
All the way excited, brothers and sisters. Grand peace and blessings to everybody out there. We are past the grand rising. I'm going to be holding you down for our main man, Buddy Love. As soon as he gets his technical difficulties out the way, he's going to jump on with us too. And I want to real quick get ready to introduce our host with the most. President Larry Ivory, a respected leader in the business community known for his instrumental role in advocating for Black owned businesses. With an esteemed background in the Chamber of Commerce and a super strong foundation in supporting entrepreneurship, President Ivory brings a wealth of experience and insight to the upcoming Black Business Roundtable event. It's going down now. So, as a champion for economic empowerment and business diversity, President Ivory's dedication to fostering growth and the success within the Black business community has been established as him has established him as a prominent figure in the realm of entrepreneurship and advocacy. So join us as President Larry Ivory leads this conversation for the Black Business Roundtable, guiding us through discussions that aim at empowering and uplifting Black entrepreneurship in the pursuit of excellence and prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, President Larry Ivory.
Well, guys, it is a pleasure to be with you today on this historical day of opportunity for us to discuss, you know, this conversation about Black business. And all of us know, at least most of us understand, that we have some real challenges in front of us. And it's going to take a collaboration of people working together in a way that we haven't done ever before, perhaps other than the civil rights movement, in order to stop this onslaught of challenges that we're going to have that's going to push us back instead of pushing us forward. So today we've had this roundtable discussion to hear from leaders and different industry thought leaders to talk about what do we need to do, not just talk about the problem, but what is the solution to the problem, and how do we walk away tonight with some degree of a game plan about solutions, not just problems, but solutions. And we have esteemed guests here that we selected that bring a degree of expertise. Everyone was hand selected because I know that they bring something to the table. And so at this point in time, I think it's very appropriate to introduce our panelists that we're going to have on the show today. And then we can get started in the conversation, MC and Lord Mike, if that's what you guys desire.
Let's rock and roll, Prez.
I'm going to first start. I see the first person. Tina, why don't you? I'm going to ask everybody to just give a real brief overview of who you are, what you do, and then we're going to get into some real conversation about a number of critical factors that we think impede our growth from getting to the promised land. So, Tina Augustus, welcome.
Thank you so much, Larry, and thank you, MC and Lord Mike, for inviting me into the roundtable. And I'm Tina Augustus, founder and president of Elevate Services Marketing and Communications. And I'm also the founder of the Chicago West Side Chamber. We touch 9 communities on the west side of Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next person we have is none other than Gail Newcomb. Gail?
Hi, thanks, Larry. Hi, this is Gail Newcomb. I am the managing director of Newcomb Consulting and the president of the Women Innovation Group and your business expert. I specialize in certification and business training for business owners.
Fantastic. We also have none other than Malcolm Crawford. I call the think tank of one of the great visions in terms of Soul City. Malcolm, welcome.
Thank you, Larry. My name is Malcolm Crawford, and I'm the director of Austin's African American Business Networking Association, located on the west side, where we say if you can have Greektown, Chinatown, Boys Town, Little Italy, Ukrainian Village, and Germantown, then we can have Soul City. And Soul City is that 1 mile stretch on Chicago Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have with us today from the state of Indiana, the president of the Indiana Black Chamber of Commerce, Lois Whitaker. Lois, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Larry, for inviting me. So, I am the founding president of the Northwest Indiana Black Chamber of Commerce, and I am also the CEO of Physician Coding and Education Solutions. And we are located in Gary, Indiana.
Fantastic. Hey, I am always ecstatic to have our good friend and our board member, Dr. Jeffrey Sterling, a world class author and physician. Dr. Sterling, glad to have you with us.
It's good to see all these beautiful and enterprising faces. Jeffrey Sterling, I'm a physician, public health professional, serial entrepreneur with offices in Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, and other parts around the world. Good to be with you.
Fantastic. Hey, I'm also equally excited to have none other than a young man who is doing some great work. He has a unique background in terms of economic development, but also in the music industry. I'll let my good friend Joshua Gunn introduce himself and tell you a little bit about himself.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Chairman Ivory?
Yes, we can.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Excited to be here. My name is Joshua Gunn. As Chairman Ivory mentioned, lifelong entrepreneur, hip hop artist and musician, film producer and actor, as well as business owner. Currently, I serve as the president and CEO at the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce, and very excited about this conversation tonight. So, thank you all for having me.
Hey, buddy, MC, I'm not sure. Am I missing someone that I didn't introduce? MC, you're on mute.
We still have a few people who are having some technical difficulties getting on. So as those issues get fixed, they will pop in. But right now, we can continue with the we can get this conversation started.
Well, I'm going to turn it back over because MC and Lord Mike is really kind of the moderators of this conversation with Buddy Love. And this is really designed, ladies and gentlemen, to really talk about some of our inherent challenges. We're going to talk about challenges, then we're going to talk about solutions. And I think we can have a great dialogue in terms of, where we're headed and what we can do and what value each of us bring to the table
Mhm.
in terms of moving this economic agenda forward and protecting our own interests. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Lord Mike and MC.
Sounds great. So, ladies and gentlemen, one of the main things that we've been seeing in the news and happening across our country is anti DEIA initiatives, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So, what we first like to start out talking about is um, how do you guys feel that this will impact our black businesses as we move forward, if at all, and what type of consideration should black businesses be taking now that we're in a political season and we're talking to the various politicians who will be running and controlling what happens going forward in the state of Illinois. I'll open that up to anybody on the panel.
We're going to do like church. We're going to have to pick someone. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick someone. Dr. Jeffrey Sterling, you're gonna be first.
I'm glad we asked that question because I'm going to go off the board and I'm going to tell you that it's not affecting my business one bit. And I think that the entire DEI conversation should be recast along these lines. DEI has always been meant to be an opportunity. It's been meant to fill gaps and voids. However, my exhortation to everybody is that excellence requires no apology. We should be looking for the dollar, not the cents on the dollar. We should be looking for business opportunities, not set asides. We should be looking at the $1.2 trillion that's generated within the Black community, not 1% or whatever set aside projects the government or governmental contract agencies are trying to offer up to us. So at the beginning of the conversation, I have always tried to represent excellence in my products and in the way in which I conduct business. And that's more than anything else where my success has lied. To the contrary, whenever I have tried to play the game of, and again, with all due respect, and there are great things happening inside of the DEI space, don't get it twisted that I'm trying to say otherwise. But my success, whether it's been in the DEI space or more prominently otherwise, has simply been on promoting excellence and having my company represent best values. So if this is a kick in the pants for us to not be dependent on DEI initiatives to do what it is we need to do, that in and of itself can be a good thing while we continue to fight and advocate for what is fair and just because we are contributing to the tax dollars that create these opportunities and these governmental contracts.
Thank you, Dr. Sterling. We do have MC. We do have our chairman of the board, Will Cowles. Will, would you like to introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of who you are? Will, we can't hear you. I think Will's on mute.
Sorry about that. You would think that I would know how to do that as many times I do this. Uh, Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. Will Kiles from Champaign, Illinois, the chairman, also the deputy mayor for the city of Champaign, and also the president of our local Champaign County Black Chamber of Commerce.
Pleasure. So I'm going to pass the ball on to anybody else. I would say at this time we can have Malcolm Crawford or Tina or Gail, either one who would like to respond to MC question.
Well, I would like to respond. Um, I noticed right after DEI really got popular after the killing of George Floyd. You saw more Black people being put on corporate boards. You saw us moving in a way that we typically weren't at Fortune 500 companies. Few women's were put in high positions, and I saw right after DEI got attacked, a lot of people start moving away. They fired a lot of the people. They closed those offices. I don't disagree with Dr. Sterling. We are supposed to look at the overall. We are qualified to do 100%, not 10%. For companies that are starting though and are more startup, they're not ready for that 100%. And the fact that that door is open for a 10 or 20% is very important, I think. Also, we were able to get access to people in corporate boardrooms that we were not able to before. And so it is discerning to me that this is an issue now.
I'm trying not to moderate. I'm gonna let MC do what he does, and because that sometimes I can overstep. But MC, I'm gonna let you pick who you want to pick, and I will stay out of it. You can call on me when you need me. MC,
Muted.
you're on mute.
I think somebody keeps muting me. So anyway, with that being said, is there anybody else who has any more thoughts about this anti-DEI legislation that's going on across the country? Is it a help? Is it a hindrance? Do we agree more with Dr. Sterling? Where do you guys see this going?
Well, I would
And I'm
like to
gonna
piggybacking on what Gail had mentioned. there are laws or policies that's already set in place. For example, with the Illinois State Treasurer's Office, they invest a lot of money in corporations. And part of the policy, in order to receive those dollars from the state, your board should reflect the population. And many of the boards do not, reflect the population that's here in the state of Illinois. There's supposed to be a certain percentage of different ethnicities on the board. Now, quite a few of them have cleaned up and they have moved on and brought, my African Americans onto their boards. But one thing that I've noticed at the state of Illinois, the treasurer's office, what they did was they started withdrawing their investments from a number of these companies and some of the banks as well, which pretty much put, a little fire in, in their seats and made them move forward to make those changes. So with, the killing of George Floyd, I think that kind of like highlighted
Mhm.
some of the policies that are in the state of Illinois and in the country.
So if you listen to the Wake Up Show Chicago at any point in time, which you can always catch the old ones on YouTube, you've heard President Ivory talk about how, and President Ivory, you correct me if I get the numbers wrong, but we speak about how this country is made up of 30% white males, but yet white males get approximately 85% of the government procurement contracts in this country, and so when you look at that disparity, that you know when we then begin to talk about DEIA and how its purpose is to make sure that there is a percentage that is given to the minority-owned businesses, because so many are just being delved out to people who don't look like us, and yet we pay equal taxes just like everyone else does, and we want those tax dollars reflected, in our own communities. How does that speak to DEI and the eradication of it at this point? Ms. Whitaker, do you got a thought on that?
So I do think that the removal of the diversity and inclusion will have a negative impact on businesses with minority contracts. Um, I know, you from Illinois, but in Indiana, our contract rate is very low as it comes to Black businesses, and we are also in a red state. So we are very underrepresented in Indiana, especially in the North area, where the chamber where we located at. So I do think that it is going to be a negative, and that we do need to kind of push for it. And I do know that there are other programs in place, but even though Biden has an A on his report card, we still are Blacks, not, the lowest of the minorities that are getting those contracts. So it is still an issue. And you have to really take time out to dive into the research. So it might say, okay, we're getting, 18%, but when you look at Black businesses, we at 2 to 3%. And that is the issue.
Yeah. I don't see it as an attack on just affirmative action. I see it as an attack on Black people. Example. SBA program, the Woman on Small Business, WOSB wasn't sued. They weren't trying to get rid of that. Why? Because it's majority white women who are in that program. But they did attack the Minority Business Development Agency. They did attack 8A. So, and they are attacking. Um, it's a grant program geared to only give grants to women, Black women. They've been attacking them. They keep them in the course. They try to dry up their money. So I really do take it as an attack against Black people. We have to wake up. We need to work together. I think Black businesses coming together, not just in Illinois and working together, but across this country is going to be essential for a change. I know a lot of people look at it as if just the vote, but the Black business has power if we work together. But we also have to make sure we put our dollars behind people running for office that are going to be able to do the agendas that we need.
Hey, I concur with Gail. I think Gail is on the money. But I'd like to kind of step back for just a moment. The whole purpose of affirmative action in these DEI programs was the fact that there was significant disparity that existed, and they had to legislate it in order to find some degree of equity. And even though they legislated it, it still it didn't reach its ultimate goal. So even though we had legislation, we still were looking at, even in the state of Illinois, where they have a 30% goal for all contracts within all state agencies, what you're going to find that sounds really nice,
Mhm.
but at the end of the journey, when you take a look at the real numbers, you're finding that we're doing 2 and 3%, if we're lucky, in those categories. So there's still a lot of work to be done from my perspective. The intent, and if you take away, the Supreme Court has taken it away, so we can't debate, affirmative action, because the Supreme Court has already decided, the highest court in the land, that affirmative action is considered to be illegal, and they're now instituting the language in terms of eradicating all race conscious things, but it is very targeted towards, I believe, towards African Americans. And I think that if ever there's a time to come together and set aside our petty differences, that time is now, because I think it gets worse instead of better. And we better figure out how we come together to make sure that we move our agenda forward, because the impact of the lack of money and resources impacts our kids, impacts our education. So there's a lot more at stake than just a little money. This is life, at the end of the day. No money, no mission.
Mhm.
And I would yield
Mr.
back to Joshua Gunn. Joshua?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can everyone hear me? I've had a little few technical difficulties. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I love this discussion. I think it's a really timely discussion, and appreciate the opinions that everyone has shared. I just want to lift up the fact that DEI, affirmative action, are all interwoven. They're all interlinked in an effort to create a more equitable society, most specifically for Black Americans. And our nation has a history of uh, repealing anything that actually works to create progress for Black Americans. If you were to go back to the period of Reconstruction, for instance, which was one of the most successful periods in Black history, we had more Black elected officials then, even than we do now, right after slavery, right? In that period of Reconstruction, we had more Black wealth than we do now, more Black land ownership then than we do now, and Reconstruction created Jim Crow, right? And so that's just one example of the responses that our nation has to Black progress. And the reason why the reaction to DEI was so immediate, right? Only 2 years, right? The DEI period of time really was about 2 years, is because it was working. It's because we were getting Black people on boards of directors. We were getting Black people in higher education leadership positions. And it's a critical component of what we have to do to progress as a society. And so I think I would love for us to acknowledge that if it wasn't working, there would be no attack on DEI, right? It was working. And that's the reason why the response was so immediate, similar to the response to Reconstruction. And so I think we have to continue to forge that path because affirmative action, as the chairman mentioned, is now struck down, right? The Supreme Court has ruled. And one of the ways that we continue to advocate, particularly in Illinois, one of the few states who has no anti-DEI legislation right now, is to continue to push for equity and inclusion at the business, at the education, and at the board of director leadership level, because it's one of the tools in our toolkit. It's not the only tool, but it's a tool that has proven effective in a short amount of time.
Let me jump in on that. We're not reading the room. Let me just immediately respond to something Joshua said, and I have another point to make. You don't need to be anti-DEI if you're effectively DEI. The percentage of contracts that's being delivered to black business in the state of Illinois render it unnecessary to have an anti-DEI posture. For all intents and purposes, that's a distinction without a difference. One of the things I want to point out here is that we are not reading the room, folks. DEI is a cause. It is a subset of what the mission of this chamber, the National Black Chamber, and others represent, and that is to pursue business. DEI is a cause. It is a subset of our effort, which is to promote business. As I said before, there was a point in time where Jesse Jackson famously said, which applied to the concept of DEI, it's like, how do you expect me to pull myself up by my bootstraps when I don't have boots? There was a point in time where that was absolutely appropriate, and it remains appropriate because of proportionality. In this situation, we are alone. There's $1.2 trillion in the black economy in the United States. If you look at the history, I know Larry loves this stuff because he's a historian. If you look at the history of so many other ethnicities that have come to America through immigration, they have supported their own. They have grown their businesses by themselves. They have stood themselves up and not fallen into a trap where a dog is chasing a car, where we become dependent on governmental initiatives to give us pieces of the pie. There is a huge pie unto ourselves that we can be out here trying to get, and we can then deal with governments that don't support us proportionately from a position of strength. Again, I'm coming to you from New Mexico. I'm going to Houston tomorrow. I'm telling you, we have to read the room. There are more states in America now that they're not coming back unless there's a Supreme Court ruling. And in addition to pursuing the cause, which we certainly should be doing, we have got to get about the business of representing excellence in our business and supporting ourselves, creating institutions that empower us. Because right now, if our conversation is relegated to getting 10%, 5% of government contracts or whatever the case may be, we will be perpetually in a subcontract state of mind. And that is not where true empowerment exists for us.
And on that note, I appreciate what Dr. Sterling just said. And what I was going to say to that point is why we are creating Soul City. And the reason is, if we don't begin to create our own economic drivers that will grow our economy, you got to think about it. Of all the things that are going on, you got to think, why is there a Chinatown? Why is in Nigeria 9.9 million Africans? Why is there a Chinatown in Nigeria? Why do you go all around the country and you see Germantown? You see all of those things. It's because they understand if we don't have a centralized location to create economics, no matter what we talk about, we will never, ever change things. The reason why Tulsa was bombed was because of they were controlling their own economics. Not because of set-asides, but they had more than enough to give anybody with the oil and the things that they had in Tulsa. You look at Rosewood, you look at different places where we actually controlled our economics. That's what happened. And I will ask everybody here to think about something. When you start talking about set-asides and you start talking about minority, the root word of minority is minor, less than.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider myself a minority. When they came up with that term, originally it was for blacks, but the racial structure was to then include all of these other people and call them all minorities, to lump everybody in together. So the program has not really worked the way it was supposed to work ever, because it went as a program to help blacks, and then they created the word minority, and now they have us calling ourselves minor and less than. It's more of us than anybody. So I try to stick with the term blacks, because I can target myself as to what I'm talking about versus calling myself, because minority includes Chinese, they include white women, it includes and there's no way that those are equal on equal footing in in this country. So I continue to say, really look at the concept of Soul City, not just in Chicago, but taking those black businesses that we are creating and transplant them in other areas so that we can create our own economics. We don't need Starbucks on Chicago Avenue. We have Spill the Beans, a black coffee shop, and we want Spill the Beans to now in
Yes.
be in Maywood, Illinois, which we're trying to get them in now. We don't need those particular businesses to come in and set aside anything for us. We just need to do for ourselves.
Malcolm,
Hey,
I agree
can
with
I
you.
jump in on that note? Because I think Brother Malcolm said some great things.
Yes.
Good to hear your voice again, brother. It was nice to be on a panel with you at Bradley a couple months ago. I completely endorse that Soul City concept and want to lift up some history just to think about kind of how this has been tried in the past. So the most famous example of Soul City was created in the late 1960s in North Carolina by a man named Floyd McKissick. If you are not familiar, some of the older folks on the call might be familiar with Floyd McKissick. He was the leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an activist, a close ally of both Dr. King and Malcolm X, which is rare to have someone who shared a relationship with both, but a powerful leader in the South. He created a city, not just a district or a block, but an actual city called Soul City in North Carolina that was to be all black, black business, black residents, black schools, black government. And I think there's a lot to learn from that. So just want to lift that up for the conversation. Our elders and ancestors have tried this before, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from what has already been tried in places like Tulsa for sure, but also in an often forgotten story of Soul City in North Carolina. So completely endorse what Brother Malcolm is saying, and I think we have another opportunity to get it right.
Gail, you were saying?
Yeah, I was just going to say I agree 100% with Malcolm. We do need to focus on Black entrepreneurs supporting each other. That's why I'm really big on we must hire and only really focus working with Black companies. But what Dr. Sterling said is important, that excellence must be there. I want to work with you, but I need my work did on time and correctly. And so we have to start creating those soul cities throughout the community. I do agree with you on that. It's not that I'm like, oh, we must keep certifications, we must keep those things. You're right. They were started for Black people, and then everybody got into it, and Black people got weeded even out of that. But in terms of the attacks, if we're going to work together, we also have to deal with the attacks that come against us. Crack didn't grow in the Black community in the 80s. It was put there. And I mean, we lie, but we know who put it there. So
Amen.
let's be honest. Black men didn't walk out on families in the 60s and 70s because they wanted to be away from their wives and kids. So we have to address a lot of different elements in a way that the other generations didn't have to deal with. And so there are some things that we have to discuss as a group together as a family. And I mean a Black family, and not for the public. I know this is live. There are certain things I wouldn't even say. We need to get back to those closed meetings that we used to have where we can discuss things, strategize. We have people who listen in just to see a strategy and try to destroy it. The hate of Black people in America is real. And so we
Yeah.
still have to address that as we're building our communities united. And then also, we got to deal with all skin folks ain't our kin folks. We see that played out publicly on national TV and local TV with our very own representatives across this country. That's it.
So let's unpack that. You know, so we heard Malcolm say supporting Soul City. the types of businesses that will be there. We also heard, Gail, you said that black businesses need to begin to work together. Let's literally unpack that. What does that look like? What does it look like for black businesses to work together? What does it look like to support the formation of Soul City? Is it more businesses moving to Soul City to take up empty storefronts? Is it, Malcolm, Gail, or anybody on the panel? What does this working black businesses working together begin to look like? Let's unpack that.
Well,
You know,
let me start with that question because I think it's a
mhm,
very important question in terms of what it looks like. It looks like family, quite frankly, and it looks like a whole different way of thinking.
it is.
Because too often, I think what we didn't understand that when civil rights happened and black people came together and what they wanted, they got, to a large extent. I think white people got very nervous and decided that we got to find more ways of dividing and conquering black people against black people. And I can tell you from personal experience, even when we go down to the Capitol and we've had strong relationships. And I remember when we got certain things done in Springfield that had never been done in before. And I think our people dropped our guards, but I think white people saw that and said, look, Houston, we got a problem because the caucus won't move without the chamber's approval on business. That had never happened before. They couldn't get things out of committees. I think they went to work to divide and conquer. All of a sudden, the chamber is not the great chamber. It's a Republican group. So we got to be careful. I believe that they're always concerned about us coming together. I think the beauty of what we're trying to do here is create an environment where our petty differences don't get in the way of us doing
Right.
business with each other. And I think that's going to be a cultural shift because I think it's easy to divide us. But I think what we're going to have to do is that we're going to have to be more patient with each other. Don't mean we got to accept lower performance. I think we got to demand perfection at the same time. But I think we're going to have to, do something a little bit different, quite frankly, because we can't fight this fight by ourselves. If we're going to win this fight, and make sure that we continue to participate in this great economy that we help to build, I think it's going to be essential that we reach out to different groups, different fashions, and come together like we're doing on Lobby Day, bringing black businesses together all around the state of Illinois and around the country to have a collective voice that says we're together. And I think when we come together, it makes people very nervous.
Can I could
Yeah,
to? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to answer the question directly because, as some of you are acutely aware of, I'm living that as we speak. We have secured a $300 million appropriation over 5 years from the General Assembly that we've been waiting to get the money for. $60 million a year has been appropriated but not released to the streets. The
Mhm.
point here is that we are looking to stand up black business. This is the Simcoe solution that some of you may have heard of, especially if you've been listening to the Wake Up Show. The point of this is that this is by design, a for us, by us proposition. So we don't expect people to come in off the streets and to represent excellence, but those of us that are at different levels of success need to stand each other up. There is mentorship that can be occurring as we do business with each other. I don't just expect you to move your business to Soul City. Soul City also could help businesses in development to start with franchises or that networking type of consideration over there.
Yeah.
But what we're doing inside of Simcoe is that we appreciate that for a healthcare project, for example, the best healthcare outcomes are produced when they're culturally sensitive and, more importantly, culturally specific. So we have identified already over 100 black businesses across IT, healthcare delivery, attorneys, accountants, and the whole nine, where they are going to be participants and contribute to this project. So now we are not only delivering healthcare as a Black owned business ourselves, but we are building up a community that is subcontracting on this project, but will gain the experience and the excellence necessary to subsequently become primes. Standing each other up, contributing to the greater success, building economies within our network is how this gets done. And until we have our own, until we are primes on the contract and can bring each other on, you're just not going to get it. We're going to continue to struggle. having average revenues a year of $50,000 when we participate in these programs that are nothing more than set asides. It's all about, it's said all the time, the purpose of black business is that we hire each other, we do for each other, we take money back to our communities, but we also can create larger economic opportunities for each other if we come together and scale as a group instead of just relying on what we can do individually by starting our own businesses. So this is a big community project. It represents one of the biggest such efforts
Yeah.
that's been put forth in the state of Illinois. So that's how we get it done in my estimation, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I
And
agree 100% with Dr. Sterling on that. I also would add, as you're doing that, also make sure where are you spending your dollars? If you got to buy a car, find a black dealership. It's not hard. You can Google it. Where do you get your groceries at? There are products that are made by black people, from hair care, from tissue, from soaps. When I say I buy black, I buy black. I recently needed a contractor, and I refused to go with any other contractor but a black person. Larry and Michael know that. I am not going to put my dollars with someone else. And this is the thing, I have no problem with white people, Hispanic people, and Asian people. They're my clients. Love them. They do the same thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. For some reason, we must get in our head that we are supposed to support each other. The reason why Tulsa, Roseland, all those places worked was because they would not put a dollar into anyone else's community. And we must understand that.
let,
And
let me
Let
also,
me ask this.
let me say this. One
Go
of the
ahead, Brother
things
Malcolm.
one of the things that I've learned is we what happened in Tulsa was because a white and a black was on an elevator together, and they said that the black man bumped the white lady, and that's how it started. Not so. When I was in Tulsa, they were actually on the elevator kissing. They were both dating, and that's what happened, and that's why they were so angry. I said that to say one of the things that we've started in Chicago, because it's easy for somebody to ruin your character, get in a room that you're not in, and destroy you, and you never get a chance, because that's what happens down in Springfield and other places. That somebody goes in the room before you or after you and assassinates your character. What we have to begin to do is trust but verify.
Yes.
Mm.
Trust but verify. Nobody should be able to come to you and say, "Hey, do you know this about Larry?" And you say, and your ears start itching, and you say, "No, I didn't know that." Listen to what people say, but verify it. And
Mhm.
that's how we move forward. We have to begin to start verifying what people are saying to us. That's a tool that we can start using, because a lot of times you say, "Hey, this contract is black.
Mhm.
He don't even have a hammer," but you never verified it, but you trusted what he said that he was going to do. So what we got to do more of is, now that we're in this new sophisticated area, listen to what people tell you about people, but go verify it. And that's the way it can help us to change what's happening in our community. And I will say this: we are excited about Liz Abenall, who's opening up 40 Acres Fresh Food Market
Oh, yeah.
on Chicago Avenue, a
Mhm.
black-owned grocery store, woman-owned grocery store that's on Chicago Avenue as well. So we're bringing these businesses in to just now see us as the guinea pig, so to speak, and see how they work with us. But then we'll transplant them other places after we get the kinks out, so we can have better businesses and better communities. Because y'all know we'll destroy each other in a minute. Somebody bump into a door, you have it locked, and they say you're not open on time. But nobody thought to give us a break or figure out what else is going on. So that's all I want to say.
So let me ask this question, and I asked this to of our chairman, who's also a minister. Uh, and I only say that because ministers tend to be good at the ability to work things out, and what I often see in our communities, and this question I'm asking to us is that we have divided ourselves against ourselves. What are we going to do? We say it's a problem, it's a big enough problem that we're talking about it. What do you guys recommend that we do in order to, like Malcolm says, trust but verify? Are we prepared now to, as people have conversations, something negative, that we trust and verify? Is that a part of our strategy that of many things that we need to do, or is it relevant enough that we need to spend time on it?
I think it's important to do that, obviously, but I think even more, some of the initiatives that I've listened to and even on this podcast, we need to get behind and we need to pump it out. We need to use the tools that we have, such as our technology, such as our ability to utilize media. Some of the things that we uh, to be able to pump that message out. I think that as we um, as we continue, let me hold on one second, sir. I apologize. I just think that we need to use the media, the strategies that we have. I think that we need to use the tools that we have, and we have a lot of tools to be able to get out to this message. Who knows what happened to Dr. Sterling? You know, there are people that don't even know who they're on. Like, there's an election going on. There are people who, believe it or not, that don't even know that there's an election going on. So we need to be able to use these tools that we have and to utilize them effectively. And I think that media is an amazing way. Technology through media is an amazing way to do that. I also believe in that we can build not only can we build a Black Wall Street in the streets, I believe that we can build a Black
Yeah.
Wall Street on using technology. That's one of the most valuable places to do this at a cost effective, from a cost effective standpoint. And so I think that doing those things are a couple of strategies to utilize. Of course, you know what I've gotten into the practice of is not just verifying. Sometimes you just got to tell people, hey, don't say nothing about Larry around me. Don't say nothing about Tina around me. Don't say nothing about Joshua around me. Sometimes
Come
you
on
just got
now.
to, hey, you might say that. You know, you keep that conversation on that, but around me, no, I don't want to hear that. Move on. As what's the young people say? Move on. I mean, I'm getting old now, so maybe that's not what young people say, but you
Now
get what I'm
it's I'm
trying to talk
standing on business now, thanks to T.I. son. I'm standing on business, Atlanta.
about.
I would
Just
say
move
this.
around.
I met Larry a few years ago, but I heard about Larry years prior, negatively. One of the things that I decided to do when someone spoke about this man to me was to just cut it off. I didn't know him, so I can't judge. I looked at that person who was so willing to talk about him, and I'm looking at their character. But I shared with Larry the one person that always highly spoke about him. Larry, we had this conversation about 2 years ago.
I
And
remember.
I'm very clear. You watch who somebody want to assassinate. That made me want to meet Larry because my mindset was the enemy only attacks someone who is truly doing something positive. So that's how I took it. I think it's a character flaw with a lot of people who just want to tear down if they don't like something. And sometimes you got to weed those people out and leave them on the fringes for a bit while you develop and build with strong character, business savvy people.
Gail, I'm going to piggyback on that, Gail, because I believe that when people spend time trying to tear down other people, they're really trying to cover up their own inadequacies. From the moment that I was introduced to Larry Ivory, I've only known him to be a stand-up man. I've seen him go out of his way to assist businesses, both small and large. I've even seen him make those phone calls and stand in the gap for various businesses. So, can't nobody tell me nothing about no Larry Ivory. I'm sorry, because I only see him helping. I don't see him trying to hinder. You'll
Right.
get cut over here. You'll get cut if you come this way.
But hey,
But
we need to keep this conversation. Again, I think the point is that we have to begin to figure out how not to divide ourselves, because I believe the enemy need us divided in order to conquer us. And
Yes.
so
but then,
when you start doing something positive, people, we
Yeah.
got to be careful of how we let people spill negative thoughts in our head to keep us divided among ourselves. Because if we come together, we're a force that cannot be stopped. I'd
Correct.
like to pivot, MC
Mhm.
and Mike and Buddy Love, who are the moderators of this panel, to beyond the conversation of us dividing ourselves against ourselves.
Mhm.
What are the other things that we need to do from the panelist perspective? And maybe we could go around to each panelist and have them give one thing that they think is important for us to move forward as business leaders overall. And we can start with Tina, if you don't mind.
Sure, sure. One thing that I would testify to Malcolm Crawford. One thing that we've done is we've started collaborating on initiatives. He talked about Tulsa, Oklahoma. We partnered together last year and recruited business owners to travel down to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we're doing it again this year. I won't be able to join them, but I'm pushing for our chamber members and the community to join them and ride the bus down there. I hate the fact that this is moved the weekend, but I'm still supporting my brother. And then also, even with Soul City Chicago, we're supporting Soul City Chicago and the businesses. We host our chamber meetings at the Urban Essentials Cafe. Well, spill the beans. Yes, you are right, Malcolm. We need to get more of those businesses open up in other townships. So that's what we're doing. We're collaborating on projects. That's how we're going to move it forward.
Gail, you're next.
All right. I was trying to MC. I text you. Someone's talking in the background needs to be dealt with. Um, I would say for me, what my focus is in trying to really work with Black business is to do unity among, start to do workshops and trainings that are going to be geared towards them getting to know each other, and then also doing joint ventures because that's what
And
we're
Larry, I want
growing.
to comment on this also. They
And
can't hear me talking now.
joint
I'm
ventures
just
is
directly
something.
messaging you.
Okay.
Joint, joint ventures is something that would benefit the Black community. One that's more successful, taking on one that's a little bit just a startup, and showing them and pulling them up, and then they continue to do that so that we have more. So I'm real excited about what we're going to be doing under the foundation of the chamber that was started. I mean, Larry, I don't know how many people know about the foundation that has been set up, but we are working on getting the website up right now. We will be having trainings and workshops for business owners who are part of the Illinois Black Chamber. They can come over to the foundation and get a host of various things. So we're really excited about that. And it's free to them. This is not paid for, and that is part of their dues. Okay.
Who would like to go next?
I think we need to go out and you said something about minister, Mr. Ivory, and I almost start to preach for a second, but then I looked at the time and realized that brother MC would probably turn me off, turn the mic off, if I got to talking too long. But one of the things that I noticed in church, just in general, is that the church does not get out and they do community service. There's work done outside of the church. I don't want to say that, but we don't go door to door and talk as much as we used to. We just kind of had this build as you and they'll come model. But there's a lot of positive things out there. That's not going to necessarily just because you build it doesn't mean that people are going to come. It's the same thing with business. I think that we need to do we do some marketing, but I think that we need to do more marketing and more positive marketing on what is out there and the Black businesses that we have. We have some amazing, just in this call, we have some amazing Black owned businesses. But how many times do you hear when we talk about Black owned business, the message isn't positive? If you're talking about a restaurant, they don't have enough chicken. If you're talking about a hair spot, they don't have weave number 33. If you we don't have, we need to continue, and I know this goes without saying, but we need to put positive messages
Yeah.
because there's so many negative messages and stereotypes when it comes to us. That's why people don't believe we exist, even ourselves.
Amen, preacher.
Yeah, well said, bro.
I would like
Well
to
I
said.
like to
piggyback
say,
on what I would like to piggyback on what he said. Since we're going there, the Bible says, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me." That's over the airwaves, the television, through social media. We have to continue with this message, but do it on a regular basis. If
Yes.
we continue with it on a regular basis, it's going to start. People are going to start seeing and hearing the message, and it has to continually be being said. So you're right on point.
and I
You
also think
know,
that
Yeah.
business owners, we need to settle our issues.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
'cause we're talking about biblical principles here,
Mhm.
that if we have an issue, we need to confront each other. And we don't have to do it in a nasty way but be respectful so we could settle those issues and move past to the greater goal. And the greater goal is really to just bring wealth into our communities and keep it in our communities. So if we settle those issues and get past them for whatever they are, but we have to think about what are we leaving behind to the next generation. That's the biggest thing that I think that we should work on.
I think one of the other things that needs to happen is this. Let's piggyback. We heard Chairman say we need to start utilizing the tools that are at our disposal. I think oftentimes we don't pay attention to what tools that we can use. So, like for instance, um, every Tuesday night I go to a small business class with CTA, and as we're sitting around and I'm speaking with other entrepreneurs, we're sharing ideas on procurement. We're talking about the different meetings around the city and the state that each one of us has gone to, that we can't get to each and every one of them, and so we're bringing back information to that table every single Tuesday. And so this past Tuesday, what we said is we got to be able to talk more freely, and we need to be able to communicate more on a regular basis than just every Tuesday, because this class is going to come to an end. And so where we talked about having utilizing the tools at our disposal, we started a Facebook group, a private Facebook group called the Black Collab. So that entrepreneurs that are going after procurements and contracts, that we can collaborate, that we could talk about what's happening at the various meetings that are going on around the city and state. We can share when those meetings are coming up, because I can't tell you how many times the people that say, well, Clark Construction is having an outreach meeting for diversity, and they're looking for X amount of businesses and stuff. So we can begin to those of us that are meeting one another and we're connecting with one another, we can use platforms such as Facebook groups and so forth and so on, in order to keep this communication, this conversation going on a regular basis, and not just when there's a clean energy summit, or not just when there's another Black business roundtable, but we could be talking about these things and unpacking them throughout the course of a week. And if there are any entrepreneurs that want to join our Black collab, find us on Facebook. We just started on Tuesday, but you know what? We're going to keep that conversation going amongst us. So that's one of the other ways.
So Nelson Mandela said, "Black people study black people." He said, "White people study black people. But what black people should do is study white people.
Mhm.
Not to say
Come
be
on.
like them, but study them." And
Hmm.
what you see is they take every opportunity to socialize.
Yes.
Our socialization comes through our churches, our sororities, and things like that. But you also got to look at how when you go into their communities, there are restaurants, there are places that you can go in and subconsciously interact with each other. And so what we have to consider is actually putting together these areas to socialize, socialization. They call it social media, and that's one aspect of it, because people have to socialize. People, I mean, you guys can vouch for this. During the pandemic, people were sneaking in the back of bars in order just to be with other people because of the need to socialize. And so I say things like the event, and I'm gonna tell you that event on Saturday at the movie theater was
Oh yeah.
phenomenal for me. That was
Yes, it
that was
was.
socialization at its best. it wasn't really geared towards one particular thing, but it gave black people an opportunity to socialize and interact with each other. So I would say one thing that we have to continue to do, maybe, maybe you do it around, it doesn't always have to be in a negative way, but if you had a meetup in Springfield or a meetup in Peoria or a meetup in in Maywood or a meetup where black people got together in one area and put that kind of energy and that kind of money in one area, it can have a massive effect on that business. So those socialization tools, I think we need to start looking at as ways to develop our communities as well.
Yeah,
I yield to Joshua. Go
if I
ahead,
can chime
Joshua.
in, can y'all hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. We can hear you
I
loud
can't
and
hear
clear,
all of
Joshua.
y'all. Somebody nod if you can hear me. Can you hear me at all?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry, y'all been having some audio issues. One other thing I wanted to lift up that I would like to see us emphasize more is the fact that it takes all kinds, right? Each of us has a different strength. And sometimes what I see in our community is we divide ourselves based on, I'm a politician or I'm an entrepreneur or I'm an artist or I'm a creative. And we don't recognize that the strength that we have is in collaboration, right? Our freedom and our success comes from us working together. An example of that, I think of a conversation I had with a brother named Mickey Mashaw. Mickey was the longest serving member of the General Assembly in North Carolina. Mickey and Dr. King were close. He was a part of SNCC in his time in law school at North Carolina Central University. His classmate was Maynard Jackson, a name that most of you all also know. The day that they graduated from law school, Mickey called Dr. King and said, "I'm ready to hit the streets with you. I can't wait to hit the streets with you, man. I got my degree. I'm hitting the streets." And Dr. King said, "No, you're not." He said, "Your strength is politics, and we need people inside the system as well as people agitating from the outside, right?" And so sometimes we divide ourselves and say, we put ourselves in the camps rather than recognizing that we have to attack this from all sides. All of us aren't entrepreneurs. Some of us are employees. Some of us are customers and consumers. Some of us are motivators and marketers. But we all have strengths and talents, and the success comes from recognizing that it takes all kinds for us to get free.
Well, you know what? I want to piggyback off of what Malcolm said because he segued us into this. He said that we need to come together more often. We need to have spaces where we congregate together and that we have these conversations. And one of the biggest days for us to do this is coming up on April 10th.
Hey, hey,
Lobby
hey.
Day 2024. Lobby Day 2024. So, Brother Malcolm, he spoke about what happened this past Sunday. The Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce has been putting together networking events every single month. There's been something going on, and there's been a lot happening. We had an event in Beverly where we had the Capitol Construction Board come, and Wind Creek came, and we had an event this past Saturday at Hollywood Boulevard. But in April, all the black businesses are getting together, and we're traveling down to Springfield for Lobby Day. Prayers, why don't you tell us, unpack for the listening audience what Lobby Day is and how impactful it is and what it is that we hope to accomplish by this. And then I would invite for any of the panelists to also speak on Lobby Day. What have you seen happen in the past? How has various groups Lobby Days affected change within the state of Illinois? But Prayers, I'm gonna let you kick it off and tell us about Lobby Day.
Hey, my pleasure, man. I always talk about the issue of being relevant, and in order to be relevant, there's certain things you have to do.
Mhm.
And if you understand the business of politics and the politics of business, then you understand that being in Springfield and going down together as a group creates the right type of environment,
Yes.
and it also creates an environment where you get a chance to interact with legislators. They see you, they see the organization, they see black business. The problem is that black business doesn't have a strong presence in Springfield. And because it doesn't have a presence in Springfield, like they say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We're on the menu because we're not down there in Springfield sitting at the table. We
Mhm.
got to get back to a seat at the table, and that's why we're doing this particular lobby day, so we can come down, support legislation, support things like what's really important with Dr. Jeffrey Sterling Simcoe solution that has a broad impact upon all of us. Other legislation that's out there, meet with the governor, meet with the heads of agencies, and make sure our presence is felt. If we do that, ladies and gentlemen, and we do that collectively, and all of us work hard to bring as many people there as possible, we will make a difference. Our voices will be heard. We will not be minimized. And I'll give a shout out to our political PAC, who's going to, our goal this year is to raise $1 million. Now, for those who understand politics, $1 million in our political PAC, believe me, we changed a whole lot of things and put a ground game together. And this is what's important. I'll leave with this last comment because I want to hear from everybody else. Is that we have to understand that when we start doing something that's positive, people are going to try to tear it down. It's just how it works. I've been around a long time. Simcoe Solution is something that makes good business sense. It's not just something that we need to do in order to have good health. It reduces the cost, it creates all. But there are forces out there who would not like to see that happen. And as Dr. Sterling says, we may spend more money on healthcare, but at the end of the day, our health outcomes are some of the worst, not the best, even though we spend a lot of money, have a lot of technology. So when people see that you can make a change, people resist change, and people who are benefiting from sickness and everything else, they perhaps don't want to see these things happen. So all I'm asking our people to do is to think about everything before you react to it. And when you're doing something that they don't like, they will find a way to try to undermine you. Coming together is the best thing we can do. And I'll just say this before we close, and I hope we get some questions from the audience too, is that you know, I could have just listened without talking to great conversation we've had today, and I really enjoyed myself. So I'll turn it back over to MC and let the other people chime in, other panelists.
One of the things that I've enjoyed about Lobby Day and that I would just throw out to everybody is that you have to move with intentionality and with purpose. That's just across the board. There is simply no reason why everybody within the sound of my voice right now shouldn't at least be in pursuit of having a black physician, a black bank,
Yes.
a black accountant. There's
Yes.
so much that we can do with our disposable income. We spend it somewhere, but if it's not reverberating around our community, it's not helping us. We have tremendous wealth internally. We need to move toward that end. So, in terms of lobby day activities and the way in which we conduct ourselves in general, begin with the end in mind. You got to be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. So what does success actually look like? Let that outcome define how we pursue what it is we ask for. We don't want to engage in activity. We want to engage in what's going to lead toward accomplishment. So a show of force without the right outcomes just doesn't get it done. And one of the things that we want to happen at this lobby day and has happened in the past is that there need to be defined outcomes that we are pursuing. The chamber is going down with specific pieces of legislation that it will be advocating for, specific asks from different agencies, different meetings with people that are in positions of power. There's so much that we can do individually as well as collectively to advance our purposes, but we got to begin with the end in mind and define what success looks like. So whether it's money, representation, a voice, power. Let's show up and show out because they do respond, but we have to be there to exert that pressure. There's a certain inertia that exists, and that power isn't going to move in a vacuum. We have to let it be known that we are here and we're smart enough to be there and smart enough to know what to ask for.
Some of my experiences with Lobby Day have been seeing IT contractors uh, getting entrepreneurs getting contracts. That has been one of the pushbacks. And Larry, if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, it has to do with that 1%, correct? With
Hmm.
yes, and so I've witnessed IT contractors or entrepreneurs receive contracts because for years we've gotten pushback from the state, and so doors have opened, but we have a lot more work to do. I look at going for lobby day. That's a way of training us learning how to speak to our legislator. Who are the legislators who are leading some of these causes or initiatives. One thing I do want to share, it was just announced a few days ago. Kimberly Lightport announced that they passed a measure to create a new early childhood agency. And what this is going to do is going to knock 40 years off of the struggle that we've been experiencing with our educational system. You know, we have a jacked up education system in the state of Illinois, which is another reason why uh, we're having difficulty moving forward in the state. And so, with this new early child agency, education agency, it's going to knock 40 years off of what we've been struggling for all these years. So that's taking it and starting with the children. That's another solution. Start with our children and change the way our educational system is so that when they graduate from college, they'll be able to compete against a whiter counterpart.
In my experience with Lobby Day, I've been to two. I went to one before COVID and then last year's. And so the opportunity to meet with the heads of the agencies, the governor, to discuss the agenda for Black community is huge. And of course, it looks better having 300 people instead of 10 or 20. And so I would say I want to challenge people who are listening who have never went. You are important. Whether you are the barbershop on the corner, a construction company, a insurance agent, there is a agency that fits your company, and to get change in anything you must show up. And so it was very powerful to me last year when we were meeting with the head of the Department of Transportation, and some of the things that Larry requested in previous years still
Yeah,
not being met. And we have to put people on on notice that you're not going to keep treating the Black community in that way. So the numbers are important because the numbers give force. And when representatives see 300 people, those are votes. And so they take that more serious than just a few people. That's what I noticed. And it's very enjoyable. You get a lot of education. So.
I would say the what I've enjoyed about Lobby Day is just the mix of people that I've met from other areas, and everybody converging on Springfield together, and the number of people. And I will say the professionalism of a lot of the businesses that the chamber represented. I was in awe last year when we met with DCEO, the director, the deputy director of DCEO,
Mhm.
and the people who could do the work. And their issue was not that they couldn't do the work. Their issue was not that they didn't have the resource. I wouldn't say resource, the fortitude. It was that the contracts weren't there from the state, and that was a great way for people to lobby to have needing larger facilities. That was just phenomenal to me to hear them say, I've outgrown the facility. I've used every dime that the state have given me, and I need more now. That that's just amazing. So the feeling that I had of the excellence of Black people when I was there was just phenomenal for me. So getting together and just seeing that Black excellence in those rooms was phenomenal.
You know what? I'm going to piggyback on what Malcolm said. I agree with what everyone said here. So I would add that it's the educational value for me. There's a lot of small businesses that are listening right now, and they don't understand what's the use of them even going to lobby day. And I was that person last year. I did not understand, what was my voice going to mean, what was my presence going to mean, but I took a leap of faith, and I jumped out there anyway, and I went on down there, not really even understanding exactly what it was all about. But I want to say the educational value. I began to understand how various laws and various initiatives affected my business. And some of them didn't affect my business, but it affected somebody's business that looks like me. Um, the educational value of it began to help me to change the nature of my conversation as I began to speak with different politicians. I can't, it was funny. There was a particular suburb, and I met with the mayor, and I asked the mayor about doing business with him. He said, "Oh well, we have an incumbent." And I said, "Hey, I hear you have an incumbent, but did you guys get any of that money from that Justice 40 initiative?" He said, "Yeah, we did." I said, "Well, 40% of that, I mean, from the transportation that President Biden put in at 1.7 trillion." He said, "Yeah, we did." I said, "Well, Justice 40 initiative says that 40% of that needs to be spent with minorities." And he looked at me and he nodded his head. He said, "All right, come on, let's go ahead and have a conversation." So just being around the chamber, being at lobby day, and soaking in the information is has been greatly beneficial for my business and for me as a person to understand how we can impact our communities, because with economic empowerment, that's how we begin to turn the ships around in our communities. That's how we begin to invest in our communities. And black businesses joining with the chamber to go down the lobby day, that's how we begin to affect change.
Hey, MC, let me make this quick comment. Is that I can see we have a bunch of callers and they got questions. Can we take a couple of those questions? I don't know who's handling that, but it may be good to take a couple of those questions and respond back to some of the listeners who are texting us and asking questions.
Well, they got
So we
one.
have go ahead, Lord Mike.
Will, you want to go, or Dr. Sterling, or whoever? I'll jump in if I need to.
Real quick, real quickly, I say this often. Barack Obama famously said, "I'm not a messiah. I'm a politician. I will do what you make me do." Bottom
Hmm.
line is that if you're going down to the General Assembly to talk to politicians, I said this earlier. Begin with the end in mind. What are your objectives? Yeah, I've said this to years, and Larry's been doing great at this. It's like the chamber comes up with a set of policy briefs, a set of legislative priorities for the members of the Legislative Black Caucus and the General Assembly to pursue. The membership of the chamber and the membership of the community simply can define what its interests are. And those interests need to be presented on behalf of the Black business community by the chamber to the Legislative Black Caucus and to our other friends in the General Assembly. That's the process. That's how it gets done. Contrary to popular belief, these folks are not moral monks that are doing involved in good government. There are lobbyists that are down there that are pressuring for different, that are advocating on behalf of certain agendas. We need to have our own agenda for which we advocate, and there's a mechanism by which that occurs, and that involves us being down in Springfield for lobby day and throughout the legislative session.
Dr. Sterling could have said it any better.
Okay. Well, answer. I don't think you. I think you can drop the mic on that. I think that sums it up, Antonio.
I
And
concur.
furthermore, let me just throw this point out there. Let me throw one quick point out there. Simcoe actually has hosted a dinner for the Legislative Black Caucus each of the last 2 years. And think about this. The first time we did it, they said, there hasn't been a Black business that sponsored a reception for us in about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So we are not doing things that are expected and commonplace and that others are doing completely. So where in the midst of their busy days do they get an opportunity to actually interact with us and to hear our legislative priorities? We got to learn the game. We got to play the game. We have to win at the game.
And Dr. Sterling, that's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying collectively we can put our dollars together to address representatives. And it doesn't have to just be one business.
That's right.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and take that.
That's
You know,
okay.
Carol Emmons, I talked to her today. She kind of leads the small business initiative. She's Will Kyle's state rep, but she's an influence person down in Springfield. And we gave her an award at our event last year that she was glad to receive. And we also gave her a check at the same time. And she has some legislation that she feels is important for Black business that she wants us to take a look at. We're going to be down in Springfield tomorrow talking to legislators about legislative agenda. Our political pack and team will be identifying legislation that we believe we're for and we're against, as well as we'll have our own legislative agenda at the same time. And as we get closer to legislative day, lobby day, we'll have a list of those things because what happens with legislation by the time we get there, the legislation that we support could have been passed by the House and the Senate, and it's a done deal. So there's no sense of us focusing on that. So we're going to have to, be fast on our feet and follow legislation when they're in committee, out of committee, where they're going to die in committee, and all the the third reading, all those factors. We will do that, and then we'll bring that when we get down to Springfield, or maybe a couple days before spring. We'll have a collective call to give people a real sense of the legislative agenda before we head down to Springfield. And then when we get down to Springfield at the Lincoln statue at 10 o'clock, where we're going to take our pictures, we're going to give people the marching orders to tell them here's the folder, here's the thing we're going to support, here's our sign, here's our t-shirts. We're going to have I think we're designing t-shirts and buttons for lobby day at the same time. I would simply echo this is that be a part of history. I went to the Million Man March. I will never forget the moment I was at the Million Man March. And I was working for Merrill Lynch at that time, and the company Merrill Lynch did not know I was at the Million Man March. And when I walked in there and I saw all those people, and people yelled and said, Peoria's in the house, and we marched through that crowd, man, I can't tell you the feeling. I will always remember that day. You do not want to miss the day that Black businesses come and make their power really known in Lobby Day. Be a part of history and invite others to be a part of history.
With that being, we got a few more minutes. So listen, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us on this evening. This couldn't have been done without you. You guys have each participated and given valuable information. It's rooms like this that are needed more often, where Black businesses can sit down and chop it up and really break open and unpack many of the issues that we're having. We do plan on having the Black Business Roundtable at least once a month. For all those people who have been listening in and you want more information about Lobby Day 2024, we ask that you visit us online at ilbcc.org. You can also post your, post in the chat that you want to find out more information, and we're going to reach out to you on Facebook also. Guys, we need your numbers. We need your voices. We need your bodies to be present. We need you to help us make a change. And so, President Ivory, if you want to have the last words, and then we'll close this thing out. And this is the first successful Black Business Roundtable, sir.
I
Well,
just
let me
want to.
take
I was just going to say, is how are people getting down there? How is that happening? Is everybody just jumping in the car and going down there, or what's happening as it relates to that? How are we getting there?
Malcolm. We do have one bus that will be coming out of your area that will be headed down to Springfield, and I
What
think
area
it's a
is
50
that,
passenger
Larry?
bus.
So everybody will know. Is that the Austin area?
Yeah, it's going to be in the Austin area, the west side of Chicago, where we plan to have the bus. The bus may have two stops, so we'll talk to. We've already signed the contract; it's a done deal. We just got to work out the details. So those who are interested and riding the bus. There's only 50 seats there. If you don't get on the bus, you're going to have to drive. But you can call the office or you can leave the information on the chat and reach us, and we'll make sure it's going to be first come, first serve in terms of the bus.
And what I share, I normally drive down the night before, get a hotel room so that you are fresh and not stressed from driving 3 hours or even being on the bus for 3 hours before everything starts. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Again, let me thank MC and Lord Mike. And I know Buddy Love was, really, he's in Peoria, was having some technical difficulties. But I know he's such a great asset also. I shout out to him and to MC and also LaDonna, who I think played behind the scenes in terms of this particular event. Let me thank all of you for a great time and for all our panelists. Thanks a lot for what you do. And let's continue to do something to make grandma proud of us.
Awesome.
Bye, you
Peace and
guys.
blessings.
Have a great
Bye,
night.
everyone.
Take care. Bye
All
bye.
right.
Attention, all entrepreneurs and business owners. Tune into the Wake